Hi everybody. Hello and welcome. Let's get started, okay? We're going to be doing some at-home learning. Most of you have your handouts from Coach Digital or you picked them up from the school. This one we're going to be talking about is Lesson 4 for ELA, Analyzing Literature. So you either picked up your packet at school or you're logging in online. If you didn't do either of those things, that's okay. Grab a piece of paper and a pencil and follow along. Our lesson objective today is I can closely examine more than one text to compare and contrast key features. It's important that we understand how to recount a story. Now, to recount means to tell about. So an example of that was she recounted her adventures, or she told us about them, okay? So you're going to start by recounting what you remember about each story that you read. So when you recount a story, you retell what you have read. So anytime you read a story to your brothers or your sisters or your moms or your dads or whomever you read them to, always stop and retell the story in your own words. It helps you really remember what it is that you're reading and really helps you understand all of the different features of the story. You're going to describe the story parts such as setting, characters, plot, and theme, and then you can compare and contrast their parts. You're also going to compare and contrast plots. The plot is what happens in the story, beginning, middle, end, the problem, the solution, how you fixed the problem. You got to make sure you tell what the problem the characters have in each story. How are the problems alike and how are they different? How do the characters solve them? And you can use a chart like this one here to write that down in your notes. So as you're writing or reading a story, you can stop and go, okay, well, here's the problem. I'm going to write that here. This is what they have to figure out. And then when you get to the end of the story, you can be like, oh, well, here's the solution. I figured it out. It's also really important when you're doing compare and contrast to really look at the characters in the story. Characters from two different stories may be alike in some ways, and sometimes the two stories may even share the same characters. In the two stories that we're going to read in this lesson, they do share the same characters, but the stories are very different. So when you're comparing the characters, you're going to look at what each one says and does. And what do the words and actions tell you about how the characters are alike and different? What do they do? How do they behave? Do they speak differently? Things like that. The next things that you're going to compare and contrast is the setting. Now, the setting is the place or the time of the story, okay, where it's happening at. To compare a place, you look at the details in each story about the location, such as is it in a town? Is it on a farm? Is it in a big city? To compare time, you want to look at how the characters dress and speak. Do they dress and speak like you and me? Do they dress and speak in old-fashioned kind of way? So if you're comparing two stories and one is a modern story about a girl living in a city and one is an old-time story about a girl living in a different city, well, they both live in cities, but maybe they live at different time periods. Maybe one goes to school every day and one goes and works at a factory. We're also going to look at the theme of the story. Now, the theme of the story isn't something that you can just underline. It's not usually said in the story what the theme is, but we get clues about it. Okay, so two stories may have different themes, or two stories may have the same theme, even if they have different plots and settings and the characters. So we really just have to look at and find out, what is the story trying to tell you? Let's read through these two stories and see if we can figure out the theme. A lion caught a mouse and was about to eat her. The mouse told the lion that if he let her go, she might be able to help him someday. The lion laughed at the idea that a tiny mouse could help him, but he let her go. Later, the lion got caught in a hunter's net. The mouse chewed through the net to free him. Jim was playing kickball with his friends when his little brother Ian asked to play. Jim said Ian would just get in the way. Then, Jim accidentally kicked the ball under a fence. Jim and his friends couldn't fit under the fence. But Ian was small enough to fit and get the ball. Ian saved the game. What do you think the theme is for both of these stories? Pause the video for a moment and think about it. Did you figure out the theme? Well, if you said the theme was not to be quick to judge other people, they may surprise you with what they can do, or something along those lines, then you got it. So we really want to think about who's in this story? When we're comparing and contrasting, we're not just saying, well, this one's about a boy and this one's about a girl. No. Who are they? What are their feelings? What makes them special? What makes them different? Who's in the story? Is it the main character or somebody outside the story telling that story? Is it happening on the moon? Is it in a city? Is it under the ocean? Where is the story happening? And what's the plot? What's the purpose? I mean, is it telling you about this person's day at school? Is it telling you about this person's adventure? And then what is the story trying to tell you about? What is the central theme of the story? Is it trying to teach you about morals or to be kind? Or is it just there to entertain you? And can it be both? Now it's time for our language spotlight. These are root words. When you see a word you don't know, you may be able to figure it out by looking at its root word. A root word is the base or main part of a word. The same root word can appear in many different words. If you know what it means in one word, you may be able to figure it out in another word. So let's look at the examples below. Each underlined word has the same root word, use. Using what you know about the word use, let's think about a meaning for each underlined word. Take a few minutes, pause the video, and write down what you think those words mean.